Look, thank you very much, Joe. Great to have you on the show. I think a lot of people will fundamentally disagree with these strikes.
Well, they may well disagree with it. I'm afraid to say that this is a problem that's been brewing up for a very long time. We've been warning government for years and years that the criminal justice system is going to implode if they don't invest in the system adequately. Over the last 20 years, criminal barristers have seen their real incomes fall by about 28%. And when we had the pandemic at its height, we lost another 23% in our average earnings. The consequence of that, I'm afraid to tell everyone, is that we've lost a quarter of our workforce. This is how market forces operate, and the government, of course, understands that. As people find that they are working on basically minimum wage, they make decisions to vote with their feet, and they moved away from criminal work. Just to give you an idea of the impact of that, last year, 567 trials in this country had to be adjourned at the very last moment, with massive inconvenience to witnesses, to victims, to defendants, all because the courts could not find enough prosecutors and defenders to do those cases. And we cannot live in a system where we don't have enough men and women to prosecute and defend cases. Otherwise, what will happen is victims will go without justice, and those delays that about, because they've been going on for years.
I find that amazing. I find this astonishing because I actually trained to be a lawyer, and I was going to go down the barrister route. And it does seem to me anyway, like, most universities are stacked full of people who want to go into law and stacked full of people who want to be barristers. And, of course, you can Google how much a particular profession earns, and you can talk to people within the profession as well. I just find it amazing that you're saying that you've got such a crisis, really, because the pay isn't too bad, is it?
It's appalling for junior barristers. I'll explain it in this way, perhaps.
But aren't they supposed to go in it for the passion? Junior barristers, they only go into it for the money, do they?
Not at all. Most junior barristers come into this not because of the money. No one would want to do criminal legal aid work because they want to get rich. It doesn't work like that. The reality is that in their first 3 years of practice, a criminal barrister, a junior, doing this kind of legal aid work can expect to earn no more than some £12,200 as a median income. That's below minimum wage. A lot of these barristers are going out to do cases where they're paid about £100 for a day's work. And just to understand what's involved in earning that £100, they may be preparing those cases for 6 hours, 8 hours, even 10 hours, late into the evening and into the night hours. And then what happens is they go to court the next day, spend the whole day there, travelling backwards and forwards at their own expense. And many of these barristers are finding that by the time they get to the end of the day, they've got less money in their pocket than they started with. So what we've said to the government is this: the government is only recommending that we have a 15% increase because of an independent review. But what the government's not telling the public is that Sir Christopher Bellamy, who in fact was the chair of that review, said very clearly that the 15% is a minimum, not a maximum, and it should be paid straight away. Neither of those things have happened. What the government said is you can wait for your money until the autumn. In reality, that means that because there's a 60,000 case backlog in the system at the moment, we won't be paid on those cases for upwards of 2 years. Now, we're losing a quarter of our workforce in the last 5 years. Last year alone, we lost another 300 barristers. That's the reason why we cannot push through this backlog at the speed we need to. We simply don't have the manpower to do it. And the government has said to us, you can like it or lump it, we're not talking to you. And we've said to them, no, you've got to talk to us. We've got to find a solution that we can all work around and find agreement upon, keep the door open, but that door has been slammed firmly in our faces. We're appealing to the Secretary of State. Talk to us. Let's find a negotiated settlement.
Just lastly, I think you've been quite clear on that. But just lastly, what about the poor people now who can't get justice? You're going to have to look a rape victim in the eye and say, sorry, your trial's been cancelled.
Those same people, the victims who have been abandoned by the government, are waiting currently, before we took any action at all, upwards of 4 or 5 years to see the inside of a court because of that backlog. That's the fault of the government. That's not our fault. Of course, we're concerned about the victims. There are criminal barristers who prosecute cases on behalf of victims and those who deal with the defence side as well. We're very conscious of the impact of this, but there's no other way we can get our message across to government that you've got to understand this is a national crisis that requires an emergency solution. So open the door to negotiations and let's get round a table.